You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is March 11th, 2024. That feels really weird to say. My name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for subscribing and listening to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, man, we're already like a week and a bit into March.
It's mid-March. It's officially mid-March. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where it all goes. It's this year's just flying by. But we're here. It's Monday, which means it's time to do a TSZ.
And we've leapt forward over the weekend, so it's...
Yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah.
Now we're back on daylight saving time in much of North America, so that's fun. I didn't need that extra hour of sleep over the weekend or anything, so don't worry about it. And I'm also not crazy about it being, light out until about 8 p.m. But hey, I know a lot of people like that, so enjoy daylight savers. And I just want to say at the top of the show a big congrats to the 600 or so Activision QA workers who have voted to unionize, and Microsoft keeping a pledge that they made years ago when the whole acquisition process began. Microsoft was hands off. They didn't try to contest it. So that's I think it's like the biggest union.
It probably is in that industry.
I mean, it's under CWA, Communication Workers of America, and I think it might be the biggest union under the Microsoft umbrella. Was it last year or maybe it's 2 years back now that like 300 ZeniMax QA employees unionized under Microsoft? So that's really cool. It's a good portent for the industry. I hope more workers that are interested take those steps, because I don't think Microsoft has been the corporate boss we were hoping they would be in the first couple of months here that they've owned Blizzard. Big layoffs, project cancellations, and leadership turnover and everything. Just already, that stuff is kind of horrendous. But they've been true to their word about being agnostic in terms of employee unionization efforts. So that's really cool. That's a huge union of QA employees, and QA employees tend to be sort of discarded, right? Like they're sort of viewed as disposable in a way. Yeah. And so now does a union in the U.S. prevent you from losing your job or being downsized or laid off or whatever? It doesn't, but it's a safety net. It makes it harder for to in the layoffs that went through last month or whenever that was. The unionized employees were not touched, I don't think, from what was reported and from what I read. Yeah. So it's like an extra layer of difficulty for the company to go through with it, and then there's more resources for employees that do get laid off or whatever to, network and find other opportunities and everything. So I think it's a great step for the industry. I'd love to see Blizzard in-house maybe start doing something like that. There's that big push in 21. In that horrific, period of time where all the lawsuit came out, and all the allegations hit, and the employees were just kind of gobsmacked, and we're like, okay, what can we do? How can we come together as a group of employees, a group of workers with common stakes, and there was a push for some unionization efforts, but nothing ever went anywhere. And of course, Activision Blizzard was notoriously sort of averse to that kind of stuff. So it's obviously a different climate now. 600 QA workers would not have been unionizing under CWA under Activision Blizzard ownership. So yeah, progress is progress, I guess. I mean, the games industry is in an awful spot right now, and it really sucks for the people that are having their lives disrupted just because they want to have a job making video games. And I think it's going to be a while before that starts getting better, but the employees looking out for each other is a pretty good thing.
Well, and I want to emphasize the other benefits that come with a unionized position like this is, depending on what their actual contract was and what they negotiated, one of the things that we're currently going through layoff-wise at my workplace is people who are being laid off go into a pool for a certain period of time. I think for us it's 3 weeks, where essentially if there's other positions open at the place where I work, they have to be considered for those positions first before any outside hiring can happen. And so, yes, and there's internal benefits, but there's also like almost priority if you get laid off from your work. So this would be a situation where like team 2 lays off, 5 people, and team 1 is currently releasing their new content, and there's big surge in with supply and what they need. The people from team 2 would be prioritized at getting any jobs to support team 1 before anything else was considered. Those people who went into that pool. So I enjoy those aspects of unionization too, because there's much less situations where the employer could get away with laying a whole bunch of people off who've been there for 5 or 6 years and then hiring in brand new people who they can pay less, right? You go, no, these 5 or 6 year old people need to be considered for these roles first before you can bring in someone new. And that wouldn't be a pay reduction or a change in their salary based off their role, because they keep their seniority when they move into that new role. So it's that to me is a situation where unions really sort of, you can see the benefits in those things happening. And in industry like this, where you can have a developer like Activision Blizzard that's putting out so many different titles in so many different ways, if enough of that gets unionized, right, you can see the power in like, yes, there'd be a lot of movement for people within, the different companies working on different games and different products, but they would be employed, which would be the neat thing about it. And you'd have something where the seniority you built up over time gets carried to your new position and your new thing you're working on. And, I think that to me is a fairly attractive aspect of unionization. So I'm hoping that, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what their contracts look like, but I'm hoping that they've gotten some pretty good negotiating power in there and that they've put together some pretty nice packages for people. And so when we start seeing these layoffs, like you said, they didn't touch the union guys. And I'm wondering if there was a situation like that where it's like, well, if we lay these people off, we're just moving them from where they are. So let's, not deal with that right now. And hopefully that encourages more people to unionize so that we can see, I'd love to see a 4,000 or 5,000 person union within Activision Blizzard Microsoft. That to me would be a really cool thing to see. And how that operates, right? Because it'd have a very powerful negotiation, and it would be something that I think could really benefit all those workers a lot and stabilize a very unstable, career path. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm hopeful for it. All right. You may have noticed that I'm a little bit nasally today, and that's just because I actually told Jason before we recorded our last episode on Monday last week, I went, I'm glad we're recording this now because I have a scratchy throat and something's coming. And then, yes, this past week has been me being very sick. And so I'm now coming out of that sickness, and it's still sort of lingering a little bit. So I'm working on getting rid of it. But yeah, if I sound a little different today, that's why. But Jason, what did you get up to this past week in World of Warcraft?
Oh man, not really a whole lot. It was another very light week of WoW. I had my co-tank buddy back from vacay, so we had like a decent setup for raids, so we were able to do our typical Tuesday night, normal Farrak into heroic full clear. Although I'm starting to wonder if it's even worth doing that anymore now that all the important axes are out, and I don't know if anybody's still gunning for trinkets, so it just occurred to me that maybe I need to ask the team if we still need to do that. But, that ended up being the only night, Didn't have signups for Wednesday or Sunday that would result in having a mythic team. It's kind of mind-blowing how much interest has dropped off in the game in the last month or so, month and a half. And I don't really know what to do with that. When this stuff came out, I'm like, oh, this season's pretty easy. That's cool. But maybe it was too easy because people just kind of were, quickly in a spot where I guess there were no goals left or nothing they felt like was worth doing. And we just don't, we were still progressing. I think we could have got at least one more, if not two more mythic bosses, but attendance just completely evaporated. And I think the team's goals, stated goals have been complete for a while. So I'm not really interested in recruiting up and backfilling and rounding out the roster to go do something because I don't want to reprog, and I don't want to end up in a situation where season 4 hits or War Within season 1 hits
and now you've loaded the roster.
45 people in the rotation. Yep. It's just not worth it to me, and it's not really fun, and I'm just trying to go with the flow and do whatever seems like to fit the mood of the team. But so it was fine, just a tidy little raid night, and I got one keystone in for the week. I had one WoW night, so I did one raid night and one keystone. I did get a little bit of rating. I got a few points. I got to 3,050, so that's nice. Just rounded off that number a little bit. I'm probably not going to get 3,100, but ending on 3,050 is kind of satisfying. I did end up doing a little bit of the legendary quest line. just because I figured, okay, I know that Super Bloom is involved, and I know that some of these other things are involved in Emerald Dream. I know I'm going to do my weekly lap, so let me get it started. But I didn't grind it out. I don't have my axe. Again, I'm not going to use it. If it provided me some gameplay advantage, it would have been done right away. I would have done it as fast as I possibly could. But I only play Prot. Prot cannot use a two-handed weapon in any actual capacity. I could equip it, but I can't really do anything when I have it equipped. So, it's just not a priority. It's not something that... Again, there's no gameplay benefit, right? So there's no pull to get it all done. And man, it's so grindy. You have to do so many super blooms and stuff. And it's like, we've kind of talked on the show about how not fun the super bloom event is. And there's ways to cheese it. And like, you can kind of find groups and then shard hop. And if, what's the tree's name? If he goes one way, then it takes this long. But if he goes the other way, it takes not as long. So what you want to do is try to hop into a group where he goes a shorter path, and then you get out, and then hopefully the shard you end up back in is the long path, and then you can double up.
I cannot imagine trying to min-max Super Bloom. I'm sorry. I cannot fathom.
It's either that or get the axe when you get it at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to do it so much. It's just... this on top of how hard it was just to get the starter item, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
If anyone from Team 2 is listening, please. No one is happy about this. Nobody has enjoyed this process. If you put the legendary in, players are going to expect that they're going to acquire it. That's just the way it is, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, I think players expect, like, okay, this is a legendary raid item. I expect to grind the raid, and I expect to be able to get it. Yeah, 15 weeks in, and then you finally get a guaranteed drop, and then you have all this staring you in the face. I'm really glad that I don't want this item, because I don't want to have to do this stuff. I mean, again, there are methods to cheese it. You can hop in and out of proving grounds to clear debuffs on things and use items more quickly.
I want to clarify, what you're describing as far as this min-max goes is in no way the way the system was designed. It was in no way...
They don't want you doing this.
It was in no way what Blizzard intended for this. So just to be clear, like, as much as you found ways to make this slightly more palatable, it's clearly not palatable, and the design is bad. Like, that's clearly the situation that we're in.
I agree with that assessment, yeah.
Like, it's a tricky thing to ask players to do something that is not enjoyable on that level in a game they're doing for leisure. And I've heard complaints about this thing and the grind for it for a while. There hasn't seemed to be a big change about it. I was worried back at pre-BlizzCon about Super Blooms and what was going to be happening with, this could be really boring. Like, it could be, we don't know. Like, it really could. And then it was, because it just takes too long. If they cut it in half as far as the duration it takes to do it, it would be a more enjoyable experience. So I don't know, man. That feels like bad design. And I feel like they need to make some adjustments on that kind of stuff, and hopefully they do at some point. But I don't know. I wanted to circle back for a second because you mentioned the drop off on your team, and maybe stuff was just too easy to acquire, so people hit their goals too early. I actually attribute this to Mythic rating being too hard too early, because the issue with drop off is you guys feel like you've completed Heroic entirely. There's still Mythic content that you could be doing, but you're not because you don't have the attendance. And you don't have the attendance because people hit their Heroic goals and looked at Mythic and went, that's way too hard. I'm just done, I guess, right? So I would attribute it to, hey, you know what? Mythic raid difficulty should come down earlier to make it more accessible so that Heroic teams who... now that they've actually gotten, weeks and weeks of farm in to get the gear up high enough, are able to actually feel like they could progress on some Mythic content, could actually do that sooner. And if they're able to do that sooner, then, hey, guess what? People stick around because they feel like they're actually making progress in things and that this is possible to do. So I still look at the numbers of teams that have killed and cleared Mythic and go, that is a substantially smaller number than those that have cleared Heroic, right? When the teams that have cleared Mythic is less than 10% of the ones that have cleared Heroic, Mythic is too hard, period. And you could say, hey, you know what, but these teams aren't trying to clear Mythic, they're just Heroic raiding teams. Well, you have to recognize the reason why they're not trying to clear Mythic. The reason why they're not trying to clear Mythic is because Mythic is too much of a struggle for them, and their team doesn't want to go through that struggle. So I feel like those numbers should be closer to like 30 to 40% of teams that cleared Heroic cleared Mythic. I feel like that's the number you should be looking for. And you should be changing the difficulty until you start seeing that number drift a little bit closer to that, personally. I don't think creating content for 10% of your raider base makes a whole lot of sense, especially when the top end of that 10%, or sorry, the bottom end of that 10%, the ones who are just squeaking in under the line, are teams that are going to have burnout. Because there's teams right now that are still trying to clear that mythic raid, and we're 5-6 lockouts away from seeing something new drop, probably. I don't know, man.
DJs isn't done. DJs is like 13% on Mythic Farok, and that's a team of really dedicated and skilled players. I mean, they've had a lot of roster turnover over the years, but they have a good roster and they have good leadership and everything. But I mean, it sounds like sour grapes, right, from somebody like me who has only ever dabbled in mythic rating. Say, mythic rating is too hard, and the counter argument is, well, you need to get good. But the gap between heroic and mythic rating is still so wide. I think Amir Drasil overall was easier than many raids we've seen in the past, and I think it felt pretty good to progress in heroic, and it feels good to reclear. It's just a fun raid to go do and kill the bosses. And then the gap is okay, heroic raid, actually the rewards aren't any good. Because mythic, other than the trinkets that almost never drop, all the good gear you just get it out of the Mythic Plus system and you upgrade it, right? If you're a decent key runner, you don't have to be that great, right? I think 18s this season are very accessible, and that'll get you everything you need to get decked. Mythic 18s are way easier than Mythic rating and require way less logistical hurdles and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then you step into Mythic, and it's okay, well, the first boss is a gimme, and then, you got to step it up a little bit for the next couple bosses, but then you need very specific strats to dial in. People have to have multiple tunes, in the Swiss Army knife, because you need 2 evokers for this pocket strategy, or you need to 3 tank this or whatever. And, that's cool. I know there's an audience for that, but it's very small, and it feels like, I don't know, heroic raid has just been positioned in a really weird spot, really since Legion and since Mythic Keystone Dungeons, came in. But at the time, Mythic Keystones were cool, but they didn't just completely obliterate heroic raid loot sort of the way that they do by this point,
right,
with all the different upgrade tiers and the fact that you can get stuff to Mythic raid drop level from your vault and everything like that. This stuff didn't exist back in Legion, but it was I get one really good item a week, and it's better than I get at a heroic raid. It's still like that, but now it's okay, you have kind of the expectation that if you just invest in the system, you're going to get full, mythic raid gear equivalent in every slot, but then you can't actually do mythic raid bosses even if you outgear them. I don't know. I think that, they've been... I think Mythic Rating has been too hard for a really long time, and it does discourage people, and it sort of just cuts the loop kind of short for a lot of players, because, like you said, they get to a point where it's well, that's more investment than I want to do, that's harder than I want to do. Yeah. I personally don't think Mythic Rating is very fun. I don't like it. I don't like the way the investment that you need from the entire team. I can drag people through heroic raid if they don't really know what they're doing, you know what I mean? But I can't do that in mythic raid. Everybody needs to understand their job. They need to understand what other people's jobs are, what's happening or whatever. And we don't run that kind of team. We don't have that kind of mentality, Now you can say, okay, well, so mythic rating is not for you. That's fine. But then it also means that, 2 months into a 6-month patch cycle season, 60-70% of my raiders have checked out. I have a skeleton crew hanging on. I'm sure they want more engagement for the game, and they spend all this time making this content. They want people to play it. So, I don't know. I feel like there should be something to close the gap a bit between heroic rating and mythic rating, and make heroic rating actually have a place in gearing, other than, I hope I get that one mega rare trinket that's really good. That's sort of where heroic has been situated for a while now, at least this expansion, and maybe a little bit in Shadowlands as well. It's really since the Great Vault came in and the item upgrade system came in, it's if I don't get this mega rare, trinket that procs and just kills everything on the screen, then there's nothing for me out of heroic raid, and that's a hard spot to exist in as somebody who leads a heroic focused raid team.
I hear you, and I want to give accurate numbers here, because I was saying 10%, and so I went over to WoW Progress, and I will clarify that 10,000 teams have killed heroic Farok, and only 600 teams have killed mythic Farok, so that's less than 10%, just FYI. We are slightly above 10% for Tindral. However, there is something to point out of, there's over 1,300 teams that have killed Tindral and only 600 have killed Farak. So there's 700 teams that either gave up and collapsed or that are still working on that boss. And you start to see that 30% number come in around Council of Dreams and Volacross. That's where you start seeing 30% of teams that have killed it on Heroic have killed that boss on Mythic. But that number just drops off. So it's just that question of, okay, I feel like earlier in Raid, this far into the Raid, we are starting to see some of those numbers come about. And maybe by the very end of this Raid's life cycle, they'll start getting Tindral up towards the 30% mark. Right now, it's just barely above the 10% mark. But I don't think Farak will ever get there. And also, it's so late in the game, you know, why is it that we're waiting this far into it to get those nerfs in to be able to do it? And I understand that, yes, I was a Mythic Raider. I was on Jailer. I saw Jailer nerfs happen multiple times before we killed Jailer. It was 450-something pulls for us to kill. I definitely felt, hey, when you did nerfs, it did change timings for us, which did set us back in prog. It did make us feel all through that entire raid that we would either just kill a boss and then it would get nerfed and other teams would catch up to us, or we'd be working on a boss and we'd get nerfed, and yes, there'd be a certain amount of relief that we actually got to move to the next thing, but also there'd be the, oh, we were so close with before the nerf, like it would have been nice to kill it before then. All those feelings I felt, right? I've been there, all right? I will say, overall, the raid should just come out easier. That shouldn't require 8 weeks of nerfs to get us to the point where we are now starting to see these numbers happen. That shouldn't be required for us to get there. So I feel like that should happen in the first 4 weeks. And I feel like we should see that, you know, more teams able to progress inside Mythic. And I think you'd see a lot more teams stick around and participate in that content if they felt it was accessible. And I think it's the same thing with Mythic Plus that we see with people who look at doing anything over a 10 or an 11 and going, that's just too hard for me. There is this certain amount of, that isn't something I've ever done before, and so it's inaccessible and it's just not for me. And it's like, well, I actually think you could do it. And this season, we've been fortunate enough that we've had several listeners share with us, hey, you know what? I've tried Mythic Plus and pushed higher than I ever have in this season. This has been the best season for me that I've ever had, pushing keys higher and trying new things. And I'm so happy that people are starting to do it, because I do think that there is this stigma about this content being inaccessible. The difference with Mythic is, for the first 8 weeks, it kind of is inaccessible, and then it slowly becomes accessible. And that's weird that's why it's there. Whereas Mythic Plus rarely gets huge nerfs that sort of open up accessibility partway through a season. They typically are tuned out pretty quickly, and then they're just flat as far as difficulty goes. So I'm hoping that they may sort of see a bit of a change going into next expansion with how they're doing raids and what's going on with raids. And, you know, maybe we can see some difficulty that's a little bit more balanced for other players. All right. When it comes to me for World of Warcraft this past week, I'll hop into that real quick. I did hop in and do the weekly event because I wanted to be sure I got all that extra reputation for a couple of factions, but still finishing up, which is nice. I was sort of poking around in there, but I also did Season of Discovery, a couple of Nomergon raids. They're still fun. I still enjoy doing them. There's definitely some things about how they did Season 2 of, sort of Phase 2 of Season of Discovery that I think needs a lot of work. I was talking about this last night, actually, with Josh, Devilor, was that I feel like because of how restrictive and poor questing was for a leveling experience inside Phase 2, we will probably see the majority, like vast majority of players, when Phase 3 comes out, just sit inside dungeons and level all the way up. And that's not to say you shouldn't be able to level through dungeons. That's to say it shouldn't be so much better to level through dungeons that's the way people go. I think all quest experience could get a huge bump. I think respawn rates on mobs could get a bump, on like particularly, you know, high traffic area quest mobs like Stranglethorn Vale. That sort of idea. Then I think you'd see more people start gravitating back towards questing. After my experience in questing, I guarantee you my entire plan is to just go and sit inside dungeons and level up to max level and not even experience the outside world or try and find runes until I am. A lot of runes were so inaccessible when it came to things that you could actually do at a lower level that it didn't matter anyways. So I would have been substantially better off in my experience and had a lot more fun with the game itself had I just sat inside Scarlet Monastery from 25 until 40 and then gone out into the world and tried to find my runes and do stuff like that, which I think is really sad for something that's about discovering all the new things that they're putting in the open world. it's sad. That was the best way to level. And I'm worried that this has now created the impression for everyone out there of, hey, this is how you're supposed to level. And this is what they intend us to do because they've made this the clear path. So I worry about season 3 when it comes to something like that. But we've digressed.
I think the big thing there is like there should never be a correct way to level, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, obviously there's some optimal thing if you want to like speed run it or something, but you shouldn't be able to look at it and go, okay, well this is just straight up better. Like, and grinding dungeons should not be that preferable to questing, I don't think. You know, and they can tune the knobs and make it be different. I think presenting players with a bunch of options and they're all kind of equally attractive or equally lucrative or whatever, that always creates kind of the best gameplay situation. And, you know, I mean, obviously they've taken some steps in SOD Phase 2 to get closer to that, but, you know, it didn't come out of the gate like that. And
well, those steps affect everything across the board. I want to be clear. Like, they increase the experience gain, which is great, but it also increases the experience gain in dungeons. So it's still dungeons are the fastest way to level.
Right,
like
you're still getting
it didn't make
more
questing somehow better in some way. And dungeons are also still more lucrative. You can actually earn more gold leveling through dungeons than you can leveling through quests. So like there literally is a correct way at the moment, if you will, to level up, which is it's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, it just shouldn't be that way. I still haven't stepped into. I spent one night in Phase 2. I didn't play last week. I was going to kind of like I said, maybe I will, but then it just kind of never came up. Now it's getting to the point where I'm thinking, should I even bother leveling up? Like the buff will be in place when I want to play. If what I'm hearing from some people that are playing is like, you know, DJs over on Wild Growth, like there's just nothing, like not enough signups to even run a Nomergon, whereas they were doing every reset and almost had enough for multiple groups in Phase 1.
Yeah. I really think the leveling process
drop off in Phase 2.
Dropped off. Yeah. I
just didn't want to do it.
We saw it too. We saw a huge drop off in Phase 2 with people getting to like level 32 or 33 and being like, I can't. Like this is, you know, like it took me over a week of time, like not a week solid playing the game. I'm not talking about, it actually took me 30, you know, took me the full week of hours to be able to get to max level, but it took me like 56 or 57 hours of questing to get to max level. Like that's huge time investment.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Like how many Dragonflight characters could I have maxed out in that period of time, right? From starting a new character to maxing it out level wise. How many of those could I have done in that period of time? Like guys, it needed an adjustment, and they've done an adjustment. They put in a buff that wasn't supposed to go until Phase 3, but I still think it needs more adjustments. It needs to be a much faster experience when it comes to leveling up. And it needs to be really attractive for questing. To allow players to not just literally live in dungeons and then just never explore the outside world and basically just Google how to find a rune once they hit max level and go out and find the rune, and there's not really a lot of discovery left. You know, I think that's
kills
unfortunate.
The whole spirit of it. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that for sure.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to do that, that's cool, but it shouldn't be the default or the correct choice. And I don't know, man. For me, I'm just thinking like, the buff's going to be there, right? So if I want to play Phase 3 or Phase 4 or beyond, then I'll have the buff at that point in time. So I don't know. Like when Phase 2 got announced, I was like, I'm not really ready for this. I don't want to do that. And then it came out and I was like, all right, I'm going to get in there. And then I started playing it. I'm like, I actually really don't want to do this. And then we got the news about the huge buffs and changes. And I was like, well, I guess I better do it. And now it's live, and I just haven't stepped in, man. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm definitely not going to while Phase 2 is up, but I really have no motivation. Just other things are a bit more appealing right now. It'd be one thing, I guess, if what I was hearing from other friends and stuff was like, hey, man, DJs is just like, we're like a tank short, or we need like one more body to get in there. Like, okay, well, you know what? That kind of changes the equation. Yeah. But what I'm hearing is, well, everybody's kind of checked out. All right, well, I've been checked out, so I guess I'm staying that way for now. It's a shame. I think it's really fun. It's a super cool design and a cool idea. It's just it doesn't fit in for me right now, I guess.
And that's my last point. My last point I want to make on this before we jump into what's going on this week on World of Warcraft, because I do want to get there very soon, was all the feedback I'm giving right now doesn't come from I don't like this, they shouldn't be doing this place. It comes from I like SOD, I like the concept of it, I like what they're doing with it as far as what we've seen in previous seasons. There are important changes they could make that would make it a better experience and help more players be involved. This is feedback coming from love. Please make changes because this is someone who likes the game and wants it to be better. and wants to see more people enjoying it, like Jason. So, make changes, please. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Warlords of Draenor Time Walking event, where the Sign of the Iron buff is up, increasing reputation gains from Warlords of Draenor by 50%. This is from Quests and Combat, as well as a characters level 40 and up can access Time Walking versions of Auchindoun, Slag Mines, Everbloom Depot, Grimrail Depot, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, and Skyreach. And these dungeons are dropping 428 eye-level gear, as well as the Time Walking vendors selling some 415s, and there's a quest to complete 5 of them to get yourself some normal Emir Drasil gear, if that's something you're looking to get. Man, Grimrail Depot, I still enjoy running. I really do. Everbloom, I could just never see again. I'm good with never having to experience it. After the Mythic Plus version of it, I'm just good never seeing it again. That's fine. I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's definitely not my favorite dungeon in the pool right now, for sure. I think I got my portal, and then I got my 22 or whatever. I got enough rating to crack that 3K that I wanted, and then it's like, it is never the choice.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, what key should we do? Not that one. Yeah. But I mean, for time walking, it's fine. I mean, these dungeons are actually like really fast. So this is a great time walking event. Say what you will about Warlords, and we could say quite a bit. The dungeons were really good, and it was also kind of the first expansion where it was the first expansion where we had mythic dungeons. It's not really what we think of today, but they realized that we needed something as Warlords was kind of dragging on. So they were like, okay, what if we have a more, challenging version of these dungeons? And I thought that system was really fun at the time. And Blood Maw Slag Mines is one of my favorites ever, I think. And Grimrail was dreaded, right? We were dreading that one being in the Keystone pool, but it wasn't really that bad as it turned out. These are super quick runs. They still look pretty good. I mean, these are old dungeons now, but they have cool layouts and stuff. They're just visually interesting spaces, and we don't really go to Draenor a lot anymore, so it's kind of fun when it rolls around. Yeah, good opportunity to I like to level tunes up through time walking if that's what I'm doing, just because I like to, I just like the combat gameplay, and then the bonuses are pretty nice. And each one of these is like a 10-minute run tops, right? Something like that. Like this is quick, as long as your queue's filling up.
Yeah, and I guess if you are someone who struggles with Everloom, here's your chance to practice the place and still get some sort of reward out of it. You can run it 5 times in time walking and, enjoy practicing your Everbloom, if that's what you want to do, and getting used to what some of the mechanics are in a much sort of toned down version of it. All right, Aiding the Accord is, of course, up every week. Be sure you're picking up your Aiding the Accord quest and completing that, be it Super Bloom or whatever else it tends to be. The PvP brawl for the week is Deepwind Dunk. This is Can You Even Dunk? This is Deepwind Gorge with Dunk Ball incorporated into it. You'll race to claim balls at the map's center and run to the northern and southern mines, take them to your enemy's base, and then go for a magnificent long shot or all in for a dunk. So yeah, this is how Deepwind Gorge should have been. It should have been Deepwind Dunk in the first place. It's a lot more fun than pulling the carts around and having weird rotations. Even when I did this inside Rated Battlegrounds, this was not a super fun one to be involved in. You basically had this massive clash in the sort of center, and then you'd sort of have people try and sneak off to bases. There was a lot of ganking that happened, and a lot of sort of like very small combats that would take place. It feels like for a map this large, the amount of players in it just needed to be higher for it to be super enjoyable. So Deepwind Dunk definitely shrinks that down a bit. And I think it feels a lot better with the amount of people that are in there. So yeah, I enjoy Dunk Ball.
It's super fun. I think it's a really cool twist on a Battleground, and it's a good one. So definitely worth checking out. Sometimes we talk about the brawl every week, and sometimes it's like, well, this is okay. It's really just kind of the same thing you're used to with like some little twist or whatever. But this is a whole different set of rules and everything. Deepwind Dunk is cool. If you've never done it, you should check it out for sure. And of course, if you're a serious PvPer, you might just be like, I hate this. Why do you do these stupid brawls? I just want to play regular PvP. But I don't know. I don't live in that world, so I only step in if something is different and cool. And Deepwind Dunk it's to me, it's like one of the better ones. Obviously, Comp Stomp, which we had last week, is just my favorite one as a non-PvPer. So nothing can ever touch that now. But Deepwind Dunk is up there for me.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the more enjoyable ones. All right, Orstar the Hymenator is the big rune bearer up inside the Emerald Dream. Be sure you're getting up there to knock him out for the 441 loot that you can get. Some of that loot is actually pretty nice, including a Haste Fertility neck. There's the Mythic Plus affixes for the week, which are Tyrannical, Volcanic, and Sanguine. So bosses have increased health and deal increased damage. While in combat, periodically, Gouts of Flame will appear and erupt beneath the feet of distant players. And when slain, non-boss enemies leave behind a lingering pool of Ichor that heals their allies and damages players. So this is actually like a free Tyrannical week, is what I'm going to call this, basically. You are still going to have to deal with Volcanic during bosses, and there are some bosses where, hey, you need to stand in a certain spot, and Volcanic can trip you up as far as that goes. You still need to watch your feet, but there's no Karazhan carpets out there right now that I'm finding are really hiding the Gouts that are going to make it difficult for you to spot. They should be fairly easy to spot. Be sure you're moving out of these things. Plan ahead of time if you can as far as movement goes. So don't be where you need to be 10 seconds ahead of time. Be there when you need to be there so that you can actually, not have a bunch of fire where you want to be standing. Sanguine, like basically, be sure that when you're fighting mobs, you're pulling them back away from, you want to have your team move past the mobs as they die so that you are not dealing with pools of Ichor blocking your path, is what I'm more thinking of. And you want to be sure that you aren't tanking mobs in these. So you want to be knocking mobs out of this. You want to be interrupting them so they aren't standing in place in it. But it only, these pools don't last as long as they used to. So they aren't nearly as bad as they used to be. Like, are you feeling this is a pretty free Tyrannical week, Jason?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, so a couple of good things this week. Number one, there's really no comp dependency. Ring of Peace is better for Sanguine than not Ring of Peace.
Sure.
Okay? But, you can deal with Sanguine without Ring of Peace. Unlike Afflicted or Incorporeal, which we had the last couple of weeks, where you need specific abilities to handle that, and only specific classes can bring them. This week you can bring whoever, and everybody has equal opportunity to counterplay against these mechanics. Yeah, Volcanic is pretty not punishing, it's a disruption. For a while, they played around with it doing a bunch of damage. It doesn't do that now, really. Maybe something weird happens with the fall damage or something if you get really unlucky. I don't know. But, Volcanic it's a minor disruption. It's going to be targeted at distant players, so casters just might have to move an extra step or whatever before they start casting again. If you have a hunter in the group, they can kind of just hang out, and just dance around the volcanics. So that's not too bad. It does happen on bosses, and obviously some bosses do require specific positioning for certain mechanics. So, you may have to pick your poison in a certain situation with that. You may have to just eat a volcanic because you can't afford to be displaced from another thing. That's okay. You'll probably survive the experience if you're doing the mechanics right that the boss is presenting. So that's not too bad. It's only going to really affect, distant players. It's only targeted at distant players. Sometimes there could be weird stuff where a boss is distant from the melee group for some reason. Like in Blackrook Hold, second boss, you have a couple ads running there, and the boss flies away and repositions. So some weird stuff could happen there. But again, it's not a big deal. Step out of it, and if you get clipped, if you can use movement to get back to the ground safely, even better. Sanguine is nice on a non-fort week because I believe Sanguine does percentage-based healing, right? So each Sanguine tick is just going to be overall way less HP back on the mob on a Tyrannical week, because they just have a lower base health pool, so the percentage heal is just less overall damage. Also, Sanguine used to stack if they were in more than one, and it doesn't anymore, so that helps a lot with repositioning stuff. And there are some packs in this pool where you might end up with a mob that's hard to move. You can't just kick it and silence it and move it, and so in that case, if they're caught in a Sanguine, if you have pumpers, you could probably just out DPS a Sanguine pool for a little bit, with a combo like this week. So that's not too bad. Sanguine is a tank problem. The tank's got to be thinking ahead. Okay, this is going to die. Then I move here, and then I move here, or I keep these moving because they're all low health now, or this one's going to die next, so I stun it and I pull everything else away from it, and then I keep moving and kind of repeat that process. And that'll save you a bunch of time. So that's a lot of that is on the tank with positioning and just having a plan for each pull. Anybody who can contribute any kind of displacements or anything to, Ring of Peace or Typhoon stuff out of a pool, even better if you do have a bad one. like Throne of the Tides, for example, right? That last all the way up to the last boss, you have those packs that have the Goblin Hunters in them and the Casters. And so it's kind of a double whammy for Sanguine. Those things don't have a lot of health, and then they're not fortified. And then they die, and then a hunter jumps into a pool, and he's auto-attacking with a bow and arrow, so you can't move him. Stuff like that can happen in this pool. But overall, I mean, I think this week is going to feel pretty good for most groups. The usual caveat applies that there's going to be a rank of a tyrannical boss that you just can't deal with. In my experience, that kicks in around 24, 23, 24. So if you're looking for anything out of the system still, this is a pretty good week to try to get it. If you need KSM or you want some rating threshold or you want, I don't know, just even crests or anything, just grindable stuff. This is a really good combo for sure.
Yeah. Okay, also happening this week, just kicked off today, is the Hearthstone Anniversary event. This means that there's crossover rewards inside World of Warcraft and quests that you can do to earn some of this stuff. Just for logging in between March 11th and the 18th, will get you the Fiery Hearthsteed. So sometime this week, if you log in, you will get yourself this mount. That's something that's important. Now, Jason, you said this was like May or something last week. The
login bonus, it's two separate things, right? So let's try to frame this before we get into any other details.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so there's a crossover promotion between Hearthstone and World of Warcraft, right? So if you log into Hearthstone between some point today, it's 12:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time as we record this. None of this stuff has started yet in North America. So I believe after 1 p.m., if you log into Hearthstone, into the game client between now and sometime in May, it will unlock the Fiery Hearthsteed in World of Warcraft, and then you can go back into World of Warcraft and claim that. But also at 1 p.m. Is starting the in-game event in World of Warcraft where there is stuff to do and collect, which also includes a different mount, not a Hearthsteed, but it's like the Hearthstone compass, but like a flying disc kind of thing.
Yeah, very
and yeah, really cool looking, and some other cosmetics you can earn that are Hearthstone themed. So that's the stuff that you can actually do inside World of Warcraft. We just haven't been able to do it yet. Because it's not live here quite yet, and so we have like a preview that was that WoW had put together with some info from players in other regions, just kind of explaining what to do in game and what you can collect. But yeah, for Hearthstone, all you got to do is just you have a 2-month period to log into Hearthstone first, and then come back to the WoW client for your mount.
Yeah. And so you'll get yourself your Fiery Hearthsteed, which is pretty cool looking. You also mentioned that Compass Rose, which is the flying disc mount that looks like the Hearthstone logo. It's very cool. It's certainly one of the mounts that I think I'll enjoy. I just like really warm colored things, and everything Hearthstone tends to be warm and like joyous and happy. And like, as far as like their branding goes, I recognize there's aspects of the game that are fairly dark. However, this is one of those mounts that I think will be really fun for people to get. You can also get Sarge, that very cute mouse with a little red cape from one of the Hearthstone cinematics. That is a critter. That is a battle pet that you can have that can go into battle and fight for you with some different abilities. And then the Hearthstone game table is also back as a toy. That's a 20-minute cooldown toy that you can use, as well as the Stone of the Hearth, which we assume is going to be a Hearthstone toy, or it's an actual Hearthstone toy. I'm kind of curious what that's going to actually be. But as far as what the graphics and animation are going to look like, we'll be talking about that next week. Overall, that seems like a pretty reasonable and makes sense, sounds good reward. As far as the transmog goes, we have Reno's Lucky Hat, the Taverner's Belt, and the Taverner's Tabard, as well as another hat that's sort of like a much more almost Indiana Jonesy-esque kind of version of Reno's hat, which is a bit more shiny and warm and glowy. So you can certainly enjoy grabbing up those transmog rewards as well. And then, outside of that, there's like card collections to get, where there's achievements associated with like collecting like classic Hearthstone cards, like the Grove Tender and the Chillwind Yeti and Pyroblast and Hogger and those sorts of cards will actually get you some rewards, but also will get you, so like how you get the game table is by collecting 10 of these cards. But then you can also get other achievements for collecting all of the cards. So it's certainly something that's worthwhile people checking out and getting into. And that's all the stuff that's actually in WoW for you to go and do. Now, you can go to either Valdrakken, Stormwind, or Orgrimmar to start all of this. It sounds like there's an actual important invitation that actually gets you this stuff. The Hearthstone invitation letter starts a quest that then allows you to sort of get into some more of this Hearthstone stuff that's going on. So my presumption is once this goes live, obviously since it's not here yet, is you will basically get inside your mailbox one of these letters, and this letter will start you on the path to doing the other Hearthstone collectibles that you want to get. So if this is something you're wanting to do to fill out a lot of those, boxes that need to be filled out as far as collections go, then this is your jam, man. I'm looking forward to hopping in and just grabbing some free mounts that are also cool looking and very iconic. And, I'm actually excited for this event. I think it'll be quite fun to do.
Yeah, it sounds like overall, if you remember like kind of the Diablo events that they've done, it sounds kind of like that. It's like the top of the hour, a portal spawns, and then 5 minutes later, Hearthstone minions start getting summoned out of it, and so you got to fight the minions off the cards. Yeah. And then they can drop the stuff, including the cosmetics or the other cards, so you can get those achievements and get those items added to your collection. That's kind of a cool way to do it. It's funny because like obviously Hearthstone started as it was a replacement for the paper WoW TCG.
Yeah.
And obviously it took a lot of inspiration and art from that, and then it also incorporated obviously a lot of stuff from World of Warcraft, right? But then it's over the years it's taken on kind of its own identity, and then now some of that stuff gets sort of injected back into WoW through an event like this, which is kind of cool. You have sort of these characters like Dr. Boom, for example, who sort of has a real presence and a history inside of Hearthstone. It's kind of a throwaway NPC from Burning Crusade. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I suspect that I will be logging a bunch of time this week and just hanging out by the Hearthstone tables and killing mobs and collecting stuff. It seems pretty low impact. And I mean, again, we talked a bunch about Hearthstone last week, and I'm a 10-year player. I play it every week. I like the game, and
yep.
I definitely want to grab all this stuff while it's in. So it's only a week-long event, but it sounds like basically the only real expectation is that you hang out by where the Hearthstone tables are in Valdrakken, and you fight stuff when it comes out of the portal, and hopefully by the end of it you have all the stuff.
The one thing I wish, which I know they won't do, but I really wish they would do, is if the portal they spawned out of was a wild portal and it was literally a 2D Hearthstone card that you could walk around and always faced you when you were looking at it, like it looked like a flat thing, and that the creatures that came out of it looked like cardboard cutouts of creatures that you fought, I think would be incredible.
That would be cool. Yeah,
it'd be incredible to not just have like, oh hey, the Murlocs leapt off the card and now it's a 3D thing fighting you, which I get, like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit world kind of I get. But I also kind of wish it was just, it really looked like a crossover, right? And as much as Hearthstone shares art with World of Warcraft, so you can't really do it in an artistic way, I think you could really do it, in a way that really differentiates, like, hey, you have Dragon Ball Z style art coming out inside of World of Warcraft. It just looks like it's, hey, this is definitely a crossover kind of thing, right? I do think it'd be neat to see like a 2D image that you're fighting inside the game, just to make it silly and ridiculous and over the top that you're fighting card characters that are coming to life and attacking you.
That would be really cool. I have no idea if that's even possible from a tech perspective to make it like anything you'd want to play. But I like that idea of like, well, you're not fighting the creature that the card suggests. You're fighting the card itself. You know, it would definitely be in line with kind of how like Hearthstone's position, in the overall like Warcraft universe, right? The Warcraft ecosystem, like that would definitely make like thematic sense. But I don't know. I don't think this is going to be an event that's really difficult, to participate in or anything. You just kind of hang out and fight mobs outdoors, and as long as you can get to Valdrakken, then that's probably where you're going to want to do it. Although if they have the tables in the other hubs, then there'll probably be some people there. But I don't know. I'll just be hanging out there and beating up Hearthstone mobs and hopefully collecting all the stuff over the course of the next week. I just wonder like what the drop rates are. There's a lot of stuff to collect here, man. I mean, there's 21 cards, right?
Yep.
And there's the mount and the 2 hats, the belt, the tabard, and then there's like a bag, I think, too. So that's,
Hearthstone,
Well, there's also the collector's carry-all, which is the 36 slot bag. So you got like, I don't know, 30 some items here. Hopefully it's generous with the drops, because I think, people are going to want to collect all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be trying to squeeze in one more 10 a.m. Monday or whatever before the event expires, right? Going, I just need that last thing. Hopefully it's supposed to be fun. None of this stuff gives you any kind of power or anything. So hopefully it's just exploding with loot and collectibles, because I think that would be the play. This is just supposed to be fun and a celebration of 10 years of Hearthstone. So hopefully I'm not sweating I didn't get that last item yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I hope it is just very forgiving as far as loot drops go. The only thing I'll say with crossovers that I'm still excited about / waiting for / let's throw an idea at the devs is a Warcraft Rumble dungeon or raid, where it is literally Warcraft Rumble designed characters that are like toys come to life that you're fighting against, which I think would be cool. Yeah. A toy factory raid, basically, which I think would be a kind of a funny concept. So throwing that on the table out there. All right. Micro holiday this week. We got Ungoro Madness going on. Runs from the 17th to the 19th. And this is where you head out to Ungoro Crater and you kill dinosaurs and you collect Dino Mojo, and it gives you adaptations. Speaking of Hearthstone, this is where adaptations came from, and this is where this event kind of came from. They spiced up this event with adaptations when Hearthstone added adaptations as an actual affix for their characters. So yes, this is one of those fun little events where you can get out to Ungoro Crater, which is still a really cool place to go. And if you want to be able to do some wacky things, you can have your adaptations thrown on your friends or on yourself and get all sorts of wacky things that you can do with your character for a period of time. It's there's no real big reward or thing that you keep or whatever it is when it comes to this stuff, but it's certainly worthwhile checking out if you haven't seen Ungoro Madness before.
Yeah, it's really fun, but it sort of underscores the point of what are the micro holidays kind of for? I mean, Ungoro is kind of far away from where we mostly hang out these days. I mean, yeah, you can take the portal to Caverns of Time or whatever, but and it's fun with, it's more fun with friends, because you can adapt each other or whatever, and then you just have more people to kill more dinos and everything. But yeah, like you said, there's nothing to walk away from this with. There's no reward. There's nothing for. It's a micro holiday, even though it lasts a little bit longer than some of the other ones do, and it is fun, and the adaptations are really cool. But is this what you want to spend your time in WoW doing? I don't know. I'm not going to be doing this week, I don't think. It just is what it is. But it's weird. This holiday has been in the game, since 2017 now. And it was kind of timed around. I remember at the time, Journey to Ungoro was coming out, but it wasn't out yet. And that said, it's ancient now, right?
Yep.
It's just been years and years. And this was actually coming out, right before then, back in 2017. So this is the 8th consecutive year of Ungoro Madness, which is really, really weird to think about how long some of this stuff has been in the game now.
Yep.
The micro holidays were a new feature. It's seemingly not that long ago, but we've had almost a decade of Ungoro Madness now. So
yep.
I don't know. I'm working through that, mentally. But it is if you've never seen it before and you're whatever, I feel like playing some WoW, but I don't know what to do. It's not a bad use of your time. It is pretty fun to go check it out and get all the weird powers and stuff. But
yep.
It's just you're not going to earn anything from doing it other than whatever fun that you had by participating.
Exactly. All right. The hotfixes for this past week have come in. They are addressing some bugs still with some of the dungeons where, like in Everbloom, they address an issue where infested ice callers cold fusion can target pets. So that's not going to happen anymore, as well as the strangling roots will spawn even if Oakheart is defeated while casting the spell. So when it comes to what's going to happen with those entangling roots, they're still happening regardless. They will not be happening regardless. That was that they fixed the issue where that was still happening. So that won't happen anymore, as well as an issue where Crushing Grip will go off even if he's defeated. So a player would just get grabbed and then held and take damage even though the boss is dead. Not a thing anymore. That's resolved. Waycrest Manor, they addressed an issue where some Jagged Hounds were not damaged by Wildfire, as well as Wildfire now only damages creatures in combat. That's huge. It's important to know you're not going to pull other mobs by accident, which is really nice. So that's a good little note there for folks.
Well, you also can't control where the wildfire goes, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're trying to squeeze the boss in and, like, oh, we're not going to clear all the trash. We're just going to go to the boss, get hero cool and back down, and then we'll kill some trash. Well, yeah, that'd be pretty bad if wildfire, like, damages a creature that you didn't fight and then it attacks you in the middle of the boss fight. So I'm glad I haven't experienced that, because usually when I'm in Waycrest, like, I clear everything out before that boss just because of the way the timing works out. But I would not be happy about that if I was fighting tree boss in Waycrest Manor and it was setting things on fire that were then attacking me.
Yeah. In Season of Discovery, they did do some hotfixes. They also did some tuning to classes. One of the tooltip changes they put in for range melee and spell hit / crit stats in Season of Discovery, they've been added to be less verbose. The effects were not changed actually on the actual items, so just keep that in mind. Druids, they fixed Initiative Survival Instincts, where sometimes it would incorrectly gain health when shifting to bear form, cat form, or dire bear form while it was active, so just keep that in mind. They did do some tuning to Hunters. It looks like Hunters got nerfed a little bit, took down their Chimera Shot and Serpent Sting damage, as well as their Explosive Shot base damage done before attack power is increased by 15%. So you get yourself some more Explosive Shot damage, but then Carve damage also got increased to 65%, up from... well, actually, I'm wrong. They did the opposite. They buffed everything a little bit on Hunters. Chimera Shot up by 20%, Serpent Sting up by 8%, and Carve damage up by 15%. There you go. That's the easier way to say it as far as wording it the way they did. So be sure that your Hunters are using your ranged attacks, because they are trying to get you away from being another melee class, because there's too many melee classes in the game at the moment. That's the one issue we have with Raid, is there's just too many melee who show up every week.
You mean the developers don't like single button Raptor Strike rotation for Hunters?
Yeah, apparently.
Seems like not, so.
Yeah,
that's a good you probably want to try to discourage that, yeah.
Yep. Frostfire bolt base damage increased by 50% for mages, and its bonus for spell damage increased by an additional 16%. Apparently this is an identical value for Fireball. Same thing for Spellfrost Bolt. The base damage increased by 50% and increased the bonus damage from spells by 14%, identical value to Frostbolt. So regeneration, master generation, chronostatic, preservation, power coefficients increased by 88%. So that's this is developers not. This is to compensate for mage healers wearing primarily items which grant damage and healing instead of healing. So this is what they're basically saying is, hey, we put really powerful healing items into the game, and there are cases where it's much easier to find an item as far as drop rates go, and there's more variety of it that gives you a high amount of healing done versus high amount of damage and healing done. So an example for that would be, I have a mace right now that comes out of the raid that gives me plus 20 to my healing done. The only item that rivals that for a healer that's just doing strict healing is the epic dagger off the last boss, which does 19 to your damage and healing. That's the only item that's actually even comparable to that amount of healing on an item. So because mostly mages are using items that do damage and healing as an increase, their overall just static number to increase healing is lower, which means that they need to buff the abilities that do this. Now, I will say this also helps druids if they were going to be doing a buff like this, because there's a lot of druids who do boomkin who also do side healing and stuff like that, but we haven't seen changes like that come in for those classes. I think this is just specifically targeting mage healers to make them more viable, which I don't have a problem with at all, because anything that makes priest less viable or makes more things as viable as priest makes me happy, because right now priest is just still the thing that I see the most. If you're trying to do any dungeon or anything, they're like looking for priest and you're like, guys, like all the healers can do this, just FYI. Like I recognize that is the strongest healing class by static numbers, but come on now, let's, open the doors up a little bit more to more people. So hopefully we see some of that happen.
Yeah, well, also this change, I think, is you injected this healing mage playstyle in on purpose, right? Like you want people to be able to do this, but then, we've talked about kind of itemization in Vanilla WoW, right? And kind of the mismatches with SOD previously. And I think this is just another case of that, there's not enough item support in vanilla, for this stuff to be as effective as it could be. So yeah, it's just up in its coefficient means it just scales so much faster. And so then, you don't, if you don't have that if you don't have the correct itemization, it's not going to be as punishing, right? Like you're gonna get more of a benefit from these abilities now based on more different pieces of gear you might be wearing. So that's a big plus, because they're really not going in and injecting a ton of new items into the overall pool, right? The new raids have new items, and there's some new crafting items, but they're not like redoing dungeon loot and quest rewards and stuff like that. It's vanilla WoW. So yeah, there's going to be gaps, and I think doing something like this is good. You want people to try out the new styles, and you want people to play all the different stuff that's in there. That's why you put it in there. So there needs to be some item support somehow. If that doesn't mean new items, then that means that they need to benefit from existing items more.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. Nomergon Raid has tier sets in it that you can get tokens, and you go and you buy different tier sets from the vendor. And as a druid, I can buy a agility-based leather set, a very specifically boomkin damage-based leather set, or a general spellcaster cloth set, or a healing spellcaster cloth set, which means that it's still something that breaks my brain a little bit to be like, right, I'm a healer, so I wear cloth, because that's just where all of the healing is. It's still a very strange thing to me, but yeah, I mean, you basically take these tier sets and you go and you buy those pieces. This is something where it means the mages can still buy their damage pieces and do damage and feel viable doing damage while also being able to do healing, which I think is, they're not going to do the same damage as a mage who is actually spec'd for damage, because they made all of the healing very arcane spell oriented. So your fire mages are still pumping out the damage, but it is something where you can notice the difference, which, and I think is a good way to go. All right. Paladins, you got yourself some changes in here too. Seal of Martyrdom damage increased by 50% per swing, up from 40, and Seal of Martyrdom's Judgment increased to 85% from 70. So you got yourself a little buff there. And then also Seal of Martyrdom and Seal of Judgment effects now benefit from talents and effects that modify Seal of Righteousness, particularly improved Seal of Righteousness. So keep that in mind as well. And Avenger's Shield now properly gains increased damage from the Paladin's attack power. So that's going to hit harder, so help you with a little bit more threat and everything like that you're trying to get, which I think is really important. They corrected an issue with the Earth Shield was not healing for shamans for the correct amount. I still feel like shamans are kind of cheating at the game at the moment. They have some buffs that are not available on Alliance side, which feels very strange for them to have done as far as runes and stuff go. They could have easily found a way to balance out the factions that way. But, it is what it is. It's what they're doing. Warlocks, the Grimoire of Synergy now increases damage done by a Warlock by 25% when a pet is active, up from 5%. So a nice big buff for you on that. And then Warriors, last but not least, your damage has been increased by 50% on Devastate, and that is before being increased by the number of Sunder stacks that exist. So you'll see a noticeable increase in damage from Devastate, so keep that in mind. They also affected an issue where when you were charging with Intercept, when you're actually using Intercept, you were not facing the correct direction when you arrived at the thing you were intercepting to, which was a very weird thing to have happen for someone. If you're like, I charged towards this person and missed, basically. As well as Deep Wounds will now continue dealing damage after the warrior who applied it has died, which is also important, because just because someone dies doesn't mean that the cuts they made on someone suddenly heal and go away. So yeah, that's another important one in there. So yeah, overall good solid changes. Happy to see some more class tuning coming in, and looking forward to seeing more stuff going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping the stuff fresh is kind of important, right? And I think, again, I haven't been playing, but I don't think these warrior changes go far enough. It seems like at BlizzCon they kind of made the thing like, oh, what if we make everybody as OP as warrior in Season of Discovery, right? That was kind of one of the jokes they had in the slideshow, and I just don't think warrior's gotten enough juice, really overall. And the Devastate buff is cool, except it only benefits you if you're using Devastate, right? That's a rune choice you have to make, and that's a playstyle that you have to opt into. And it's good. That should be better, but it doesn't, it's kind of small potatoes overall for the class. Deep Wounds doesn't really last that long anyway, so, it's going to expire shortly after you die if you're dead, because you're not going to be reapplying it. And the facing issues after charging, intercepting, intervening, whatever, I mean, I still get them in retail sometimes, so you never know. Like, it's obnoxious when you get spun around the wrong way, or you end up on the other side of the thing you thought you were moving towards, but that seems to be a never-ending battle. So I'm glad that they're going through and doing a lot of these changes, and I think it's important that with Season of Discovery, I think they really need to stay on top of the stuff and make a lot of changes to tuning, because you want to reward the people that are investing the time in it appropriately, and buffing stuff is kind of how they feel that reward. So I'm glad they're doing it. From the overall impression I get, I think they probably need to do some more, especially with certain classes, and take like a bigger overall pass. But I mean, yeah, a lot of changes came in last week, and I think the team has done an admirable job of keeping stuff fresh and trying to go with the flow and go with what the players are asking for or needing or what they're observing. But I don't know, for an experiment like Season Discovery, I don't know if you could do too much of that, right? I think you can always do more.
Yeah. There's always something to tweak when it comes to that sort of thing. Speaking of tweaking things, there are some tweaks that have come in for live Dragonflight as far as classes go. Kyvax comes in with a post saying, as we've closely monitored data on class performance as well as player feedback, with all that in mind, they've developed the following adjustments to classes that are over and underperforming in group content and PvP. These changes are going into effect with weekly scheduled maintenance. That is tomorrow's maintenance. Restoration Druid outside of PvP is getting a 12% healing increase. Yeah, 12%. That is a substantial, massively substantial increase to overall healing for Resto Druids. So, way more viable starting tomorrow. So just keep that in mind as far as Resto Druid goes. Evokers, your preservation has been underutilized, according to developers' notes here, in part due to the range restrictions of the specialization. To help compensate for that, they're increasing the healing and defensiveness of preservation so they can traverse the battlefield more easily and safely. The time of need clones overall healing has been increased by 100%. Time of needs clones living flame healing has also been increased by 16%. Life Giver's Flame has been increased by, I guess 5% at tier 1 and 10% at tier 2, depending on how many points you put into it. Inherent Resistance reduces magic damage taken by 4 to 8% based off of points put in, as opposed to 2 to 4, so they've doubled that. And then they also increased the Attune of the Dream healing by 3 to 6% as opposed to 2 to 4%. So overall, Evoker getting some pretty big changes there as well. None of this is PvE specific. So this is all something that you'll notice in both areas as far as PvP and PvE. As far as hunters go, Marksman and Survival both had the damage done by you and your pet increased by 3% for Marksman and Survival, and that's across the board, PvE and PvP. Same thing with Frost Mages. We saw Flurry damage, Water Bolt, and Water Jet damage, Frost Bolt, Ice Lance damage all increased. That is a nice big buff to them. Mistweaver Monks, with this buff not affecting PvP, all healing reduced by 6%. So they're actually not reducing Mistweaver healing inside of PvP, but they are reducing it in PvE. So keep that in mind. Shayloon's Gift healing has been increased by 6%. Jadefire Stomp healing and damage increased by 6%. And Expel Harm damage increased. Sorry, Expel Harm healing increased, not damage. You're not hurting people. You're not impelling harm. If you
expel it hard enough into a target, then yeah.
Increased by 6%. And so those three abilities that they buffed are across the board in PvE and PvP. But the general healing buff is PvE only. Not buff, healing reduction. Subtlety Rogue, Eviscerate damage, reduced by 6%, does not affect PvP. Elemental Shamans, all damage increased by 3%, does not affect PvP. They basically went in, sort of messed around with a lot of class tuning versus PvP versus PvE. You can feel free to sort of pop in and look at your class specifically as to what changes have come in, because there's more changes that have come in that are much more specific to PvP. Things like they fix an issue with Druids where Well-Honed Instincts debuff was not clearing on the start of a fresh PvP match, so they were coming in with Well-Honed Instincts active. That kind of stuff they went in and changed, a bunch of fixes like that. So be sure you get in, check out your changes. A lot of them are PvP specific that they go on to list after this. I just wanted to capture the PvE ones there at the very top. They really factored in for the majority of players. And then if you're a PvP person, be sure you go and look at the changes to your specific class, because there are things like Holy Paladin, getting themselves some buffs in here. Judgment damage increased by 50%. Greater Judgment Absorb increased by 30%. Like, there are some buffs in here that are notable ones. The Denounce PvP talent damage is increased by 70% for Holy Paladins. So like there's some significant changes here tuning wise. So if you're a PvPer, check out the show notes. You can check out the patch notes and see what's going on with that. All right. Weekly scheduled maintenance is running long tomorrow. So be sure you're ready for the fact that maintenance is going to take the servers down from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. Pacific time, so that you're not going to see the game come up until 6 o'clock Eastern. That's a thing. It might come up before then, because sometimes they just sort of set out a good window, and then when it's done, it's done. But don't be anticipating logging in right at normal reset time and being able to hop into the game and get stuff going. We have extended maintenance this week, and all the little tinfoil hats are going on about new content and when content's being patched in and what's happening with it. And this is them getting stuff in there ahead of a launch of something. So just keep that in mind, that there's a lot going on tomorrow, and you'll be out of WoW for a bit longer than usual.
Yeah, I think this is likely patch maintenance. This is a really long window, and usually those really long windows, they only schedule them for patch maintenance. So obviously we don't know at the time of us recording this, and the team has been radio silent about 10.2.6. We know that it exists, right? Like, they put it on the roadmap, but then haven't said, there's no blue text, no PTR, nothing. So I would expect that they'll just drop it without telling us, right? Like, that would be in the spirit of this whole patch release. So we'll see. We may be playing 10.2.6 by the next time we do another episode of the show. And so we'll see what it's all about. I think the big list of tuning changes that we have coming in for reset this week, that also is sort of possibly an indicator that yes, this is indeed patch maintenance. Yeah, like, it would just kind of make sense, right? So we'll see. It could be that they have some other maintenance that needs to happen, and so they're going to do this, and then the patch is going to be next week or something, or the week after. But I feel like this just makes sense. It's been about 2 months since the last patch. This is a giant maintenance window, which usually means it's a patch. It's a patch maintenance window. So yeah, we'll see. The discourse is sort of become like, oh, well, this isn't good. They shouldn't do this. That we need more communication. And for me, like, I kind of like this experiment. Like, I know Holly Longdale, who is, what is her title? She's like the
she's the narrative
executive producer and VP of WoW. She's pretty much the WoW boss. She was kind of responding on Twitter like, they've learned that not having news is frustrating for creators and players, and their goal was just to have fun with it. And I think it could be cool, and we'll see what the ultimate result is of the patch coming out, what it entails, what this whole thing is about. We're in a position where we don't play and talk about WoW for a living, so I don't really feel like it's that big of a deal to us. And I'm not sure that the only way for them to publish the game is to feed the people who make money off of talking about it and playing it. Like, most people who play the game are not that, right? So I think it's cool to do something different and do this kind of stealth patch release, and who knows what it's going to be, or what the event that it's going to introduce is going to be like. Maybe it comes out, we're like, well, this sucks, this was not worth it, like, this was 2 months of silence, no blue text, minimal in-game changes, no PTR, nothing to talk about, nothing to think about, nothing to test. The event comes out and it's underwhelming and buggy, and we all hated it. But hey, that could 100% be what happens. It could also just be really cool, and then we all get this neat surprise when the game is pretty much in doldrums otherwise. So I don't know. That's kind of where I land on it. Like, I'm okay with them doing something weird and kind of outside the box and doing this surprise patch, if you want to call it that, or however you want to think about it. But I know a lot of people have been starving. I'm just not. I'm not in that category. I'm cool with whatever, but I do have a feeling that based on some of the responses that they've seen to us, they probably won't do something like this again, regardless of what the response to the content itself ends up being.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious as to what the actual response to all this ends up being as well. I'm hoping that this new content that comes in is going to be really enjoyable, have more than a few little quest chains. The biggest thing the game needs right now is a repeatable activity that's a lot of fun. Like a new one, outdoor world or small group based repeatable activity that's a lot of fun. That has a reward that feels rewarding and fun to do. So I'm hoping it's something like this is what I'm hoping it is. Whether that's an instant scenario or something that's a fun little repeatable thing that people just want to hop into and play. There's a lot of games out there right now that have a really fun loop. I feel like World of Warcraft needs a new, really fun loop at the moment. And so I would hope that this patch could find anything that's just, even for a couple of weeks, just a fun little loop for people to get into and enjoy with that. All right. Cataclysm Classic has now moved into closed beta. There is signups that you can go and sign up for, and we'll have links in the show notes for that as well. And yeah, from the fires of destruction, a new Azeroth arises following the Deathwing the Destroyer's cataclysmic entrance, which left a festering wound across Azeroth. Heroes are called once again to experience a dramatically reforged Azeroth and defend it from utter devastation. Man, back in the days when they were changing up the world that players could actually experience, that was Cataclysm. And yeah, so if you're someone who wants to hop in and experience that, sign up for the closed stuff. There's also access to Cataclysm Classic is going to be included, obviously, inside your normal WoW subscription. However, they do mention this thing called the Blazing Epic Upgrade. All right. This is apparently an epic upgrade you can purchase, which gets you stuff when it comes to World of Warcraft. You get 30 days of game time as part of this. You get yourself a Ragnaros mount, which is kind of cool. You get yourself a little, oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. The Dragon Prince.
Rathian?
Rathian, thank you. You get a Rathian Dragon Whelp pet. And yeah, it's something that's worth checking out. And I assume there's also a boost involved in that because there's definitely pictures of people. Oh, here it is. Here's the boost.
Yeah, there's a level 80 boost.
Yeah, level 80 boost that's in there. So, and a town in a box starter set toy box. So whatever that actually means, a town in a box starter set toy is another thing you can get. So certainly something that's worth checking out. If you're into the classic situation, you can get yourself all this bonus stuff to roll around in classic. And that Firelord mount I was talking about is actually a mount for the modern World of Warcraft characters. So if you want a Ragnaros mount, quite literally, you can have a Ragnaros mount in the live game by purchasing this thing, which I think is pretty cool. Now, obviously, it's prohibitively expensive in my case. I'm not going to buy this, but for those who are into Classic and really want to dive into Classic, I could definitely see it being worthwhile for folks. Keep in mind that the 30-day game time and the boost actually have a monetary value, and so that can offset in your mind some of the costs of what you're spending on this. It is only $40.50 Canadian is what it costs for me to get a version that gets me that live mount, which typically mounts for $25 on the store. So that's not terrible if I really wanted it, but yeah, just keep that in mind cost-wise. If that's something you want to invest in, you can get yourself the Blazing Epic upgrade for the whole thing too. Oh man! All right, with that. Oh, you want to talk about this at all, Jason?
Well, I was just going to ask, did you opt in to Classic beta?
I did not. I did not.
Blizzard was kind enough to invite creators to make sure that they were on the list for closed beta. But this is real. I've been sort of Classic skeptical for a long time. When it was first coming out, I wasn't really that excited about it. And then I did end up playing it a bit, and then I really didn't like it. And then I kind of came back and finished it up, and then I leveled through TBC. I was excited for Wrath, but I ended up never playing it. I think I got to 72 or something. I never finished leveling in Wrath. And Cataclysm was the first one where it's like, dude, I'm just not interested. Now, maybe, look, we're well past the #NoChanges era, right? Like, we have Classic era servers, and they're going to be what they are. And I think a lot of players, unless you started in Cataclysm, a lot of players really don't have much fondness for Cataclysm. So maybe this is an opportunity. Maybe this is a redemption story for Cataclysm, right? Maybe they take the good stuff and emphasize the good stuff and de-emphasize the bad stuff. And so maybe Cataclysm Classic ends up being cool. I just still can't really wrap my brain around the fact that, like, they're doing this. Like, it makes sense that they're doing it in terms of the response they've seen to the Classic products and the ongoing march of time, right? Like, it's time to do Cataclysm Classic, but it's a weird concept to me because one of the main things that back when people were, spamming every Q&A stream that Lore was doing with Ian about legacy servers, Cataclysm was like the inflection point that they wanted to change it back from, right? Like, really, that they wanted that version of Azeroth back and all that stuff. So to me, it's kind of a weird idea because Cataclysm sort of diverges from what I think of as classic WoW to begin with. So I'll be interested to see how it does, and if they really kind of change it up and improve it, or if they kind of just present it as a time accelerated version of the way that it was, and what the classic audience thinks of it, man. I mean, I know, like, I've heard from a lot of people over the years who checked out. Cataclysm was the end for them, and that's why they wanted classic in the first place, was to get back to what they liked. Are those people going to play Cataclysm Classic now? And if they do, what are they going to think of it? It's a very weird thing to me. Like, I can 100% see the appeal of Classic era, TBC Classic, Wrath Classic, 100%. Like, I get it. I get why people wanted to revisit that stuff and play it. Cata, I don't know, man. It's going to be. I'm going to be really curious to see what the reaction is to the classic crowd, the people that are in there day in, day out, week in, week out. It's not me, but it's Cataclysm is such a divisive. It's where WoW peaked and fell off. It was the end of WoW as this like cultural phenomenon in a lot of ways. So it's I don't know. It's going to be a weird ride with the classic version.
It's also where a lot of people first started playing the game, so I feel like it also has a lot of nostalgia to it for those people. So I know that there's a lot of people that are like, this is the height of my World of Warcraft experience, is when I was first passionately learning about it. So I think there will be a draw to it. Personally, Cataclysm doesn't have any features in the expansion that I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to get in and get back to doing XYZ again. The thing that's going to come out in Classic eventually that I am going to be absolutely into is Classic Pandaria. When they do Classic Pandaria, which is the next expansion to happen, if they're going to be continuing doing Classic, it's going to have two things that I want to highlight outside of the beautiful landscape and world. One is the farm, which I always dug and enjoyed hanging out on and doing my farm stuff. Two is brawls. The Brawlers Guild would be coming back. The Brawlers Guild has been inactive in World of Warcraft since BFA. That's when it was last active.
BFA was the last one, yeah.
Was the last time they had a Brawlers Guild. It has been forever since they did that, and it really saddens me that it's not active for more people to experience it, because those challenges were a lot of fun, and it was a fun experience. And I've been chatting with my friend Josh, and he would be totally down for doing casting of Brawlers Guild again if they ever did that. And he was great at it, and we really enjoyed it. And there was a lot of people who found his channel and found his content based off of him doing things like that. And I think with where social media is at right now, and YouTube and Shorts and TikTok and all this kind of stuff, it's perfectly built for that kind of content. So it's really sad to me that they have this feature that exists in the game that is just turned off. They literally could turn on the Brawlers Guild next week if they wanted to by just literally toggling it back on. And people could go and experience the original Brawlers Guild in the basement of, the Deep Run Tram. That would still exist. And out inside Orgrimmar, they still have the fighting arena still there. And they still have, you can still go into the Brawlers Guild in the basement area of Deep Run Tram. You can still go there. They just aren't holding fights. They're just a bunch of people. All the NPCs are still there. They just aren't having the thing activated. So I would love if they turn that back on. I would love to see Brawlers Guild back. And if I have to wait until Classic Pandaria, I'm sad that I have to wait to Classic Pandaria to get that. But at least I know if they do Classic Pandaria, there'll be brawls, and I'll be happy to have them back. And I'll probably level a character just so I can play around with them again, because it was one of the more fun things to do in your downtime, is hop into the queue, watch other people competing, chat with people about strategies, see what someone's doing, learn the new stratus of watching someone do something, realize you don't have enough damage, so figure out what you need to upgrade or what you can improve to sort of squeeze out more damage or change your rotation a bit, or there's a lot of ways to sort of test and trial yourself in them that I think were great. So I want Brawler's Guild back, man. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I want from all this stuff.
It was a cool feature.
Yeah.
It's got to take a lot to design. I think probably they must have just looked at like participation rates and were like, it's not worth.
Well, I don't need new fights. Keep the old fights. They already have all the old fights designed.
Well, right. I mean, yeah, in Classic it would be there for sure. But I think they should bring it back 100%.
Yeah.
Like, and for a lot of reasons you specified, and also as kind of that thing you were mentioning of adding that thing to the loop, you know?
Yeah.
Brawler's Guild is super fun, and it was a cool feature in Pandaria. It would be cool to see it live again in Classic, but I do hope they bring it back to retail sooner than later.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to do a new one and get some new rewards from it. It's a really, it's the kind of feature that makes WoW really feel alive, right? It feels like something that the people the quote unquote people who live inside the game world would be doing, you know? So that's why it was always so cool.
Well, I also want to point out you can't right now earn the rewards because you can't do brawls, which means there's like heirlooms that people just can't earn. So like,
the fifth weapon or whatever.
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange to me that they have that all turned off. So I want that turned back on. Get on that over there, Blaze. I want Brawler's Guild back. All right. With that, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Man, oh man, I want to give a shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Celian, James, Kapawi, Max, Skazrin, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for what you give, and thank you to all of our patrons for everything that you give to us to support the show. Big shout out to our newest patron, Pinky. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting us, and thanks for the email. Got that email from you. It was a good read, and yeah, we'll probably share a little bits and pieces of it here and there. But man, thank you so much. All the support you guys give goes back into the show, and I'm really happy to continue producing it and working on it and putting out content for you because it's fun for us. And you know, I love that we can all share this crazy passion for something like a video game.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Pinky, for hopping in and supporting the show and dropping us a nice line. Really appreciate it. And yes, thank you, patrons, past and present, for helping us out. It really means a lot, and it is the thing that keeps the show on track. It's the reason why you get an episode every week. So thank you all for helping us out.
Yeah. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 622 of The Starting Zone. If you want to support the show, another great way to do it is leaving us a 5-star review on your iTunes or Apple podcast. It goes a long way to boosting us up those charts, and we'll read them here live on the show. No reviews at the moment, so if you're wanting to get one in for 623, just get a review in there, and we will get it in on the show and read it here live. And we always appreciate it. It really helps the show out. You can check out our website over at thestartingzone.com thestartingzone.com. If you want to join our Discord server, it's thestartingzone.com/Discord, where you can sort of ask us questions and give us feedback. The email address you can reach us at is thestartingzone@gmail.com for the same reasons, and our Twitter is @thestartingzone. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. You can check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
The best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. You can also find me over on Blue Sky, just Jay Lucas over there. And you can also find my video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Video channels have been real quiet. I just haven't been streaming lately. I mean, I was really sick for a long time, like for like a month. I'm feeling better, which is nice, but I'm not playing a lot of WoW, so just stream has been kind of dormant. Maybe, you know, if we end up getting patched this week, maybe if there's stuff to do, maybe I'll hop in. So usually, you know, streams would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, although now I'm down to like one raid night a week, so I don't know. The schedule's all over the place. I haven't abandoned it. Like, I will certainly be doing it again someday. Like, when Season 4 starts, those channels will be active for sure. So, come check those out as well.
If you're trying to find me, you can find me on YouTube at Spencer_Downey, over on Twitch at SpencerHD. You can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey. The Blue Sky is SpencerHD. So it's one of those two. They all have my picture. It's not hard to find me. But yeah, it's Twitter is at Spencer_Downey, and Blue Sky is the SpencerHD, which is my brand for YouTube and Twitch. All right. With that, I want to say for Jason and myself, thanks for listening, and jobs done.